Everyone believed the Amiga would conquer the world. They were profoundly wrong. In 1985, a machine emerged from the shadows of Silicon Valley, promising a future of computing that felt utterly alien to its contemporaries. It was a technological marvel, light years ahead of anything else on the market. Yet within a decade, it was a ghost, a cautionary tale of innovation outrunning its own market. The story of the Amiga begins not with Commodore, but with a small startup in Santa Clara, California, named Amiga Corporation. Founded in 1982 by Jay Miner, a chip designer who had previously worked on the Atari 2600, their vision was audacious. Build the most advanced home computer ever conceived, powered by custom chips that would redefine multimedia. These weren't just faster components. These were dedicated coprocessors designed to handle graphics, sound, and animation with unparalleled efficiency. The Paula chip for audio, Denise for video, and Agnes for memory management and blitter functions. A symphony of silicon, orchestrated for performance that Intel and Motorola chips alone simply couldn't touch. But developing such groundbreaking technology was expensive. By 1984, Amiga Corporation was bleeding money, desperately seeking a buyer or an investor to keep their dream alive. They found their lifeline, ironically, in Atari, who offered a substantial loan, intending to acquire Amiga outright and use their technology for the next generation of Atari computers. Then a twist. Commodore International, Atari's fierce rival in the home computer market, swooped in. They repaid Atari's loan, effectively buying Amiga Corporation out from under them for a cool $27 million. The stage was set for the Amiga 1000, launched with much fanfare in July 1985, a machine that promised a revolution. And it was, initially, revolutionary. The Amiga 1000 boasted a graphical user interface predating Windows by several years and color graphics far superior to the monochrome or limited palettes of its rivals. It could display 4096 colors, animate sprites, and produce sophisticated stereo sound. It was the multimedia powerhouse of its era. Early adopters, particularly in Europe, embraced it. Artists, musicians, and video producers quickly recognized its potential. It became a staple in early desktop video production, even being used by NASA for graphic generation. The very first episodes of Babylon 5 were rendered on Amigas. Its capabilities were undeniable. Yet beneath this dazzling surface, cracks began to appear in Commodore's strategy. Their marketing was often confused, failing to clearly position the Amiga. Was it a business machine, a gaming console, a multimedia workstation? They tried to be all things to all people, and in doing so, struggled to capture any specific market decisively. The Amiga 1000 was also expensive, retailing for around $1,295, equivalent to over $3,500 today. This price point, combined with a lack of compelling business software compared to the IBM PC, limited its appeal beyond the enthusiast and professional multimedia markets. Commodore, in a bid to broaden the market, released the Amiga 500 in 1987. Priced at a more accessible $699, it was essentially the same powerful hardware in a more consumer-friendly package. This move saw a surge in sales, particularly in Europe, cementing the Amiga's reputation as a premier gaming platform. But even as the Amiga 500 flew off the shelves, the seeds of its downfall were being sown. Commodore's internal politics were legendary for their dysfunction. A revolving door of CEOs and infighting between divisions meant inconsistent product development and a lack of coherent, long-term vision. While the Amiga was technologically superior, it was often hobbled by Commodore's inability to foster a robust software ecosystem. Developers preferred the burgeoning IBM PC-compatible market, which, despite its graphical limitations, offered a massive, standardized user base and a clearer path to profitability. The Amiga's custom chips, while powerful, also presented a double-edged sword. While they offered superior performance, they made it difficult for third-party manufacturers to produce compatible hardware, limiting the aftermarket and peripheral ecosystem that thrived around the PC. Then came the rise of Windows 3.0 in 1990, Microsoft's graphical environment, combined with the ever-improving capabilities of Intel processors and cheaper PC clones, began to erode the Amiga's perceived advantages. The gap in graphical performance, once a chasm, started to narrow. Commodore's response was often too little, too late. They continued to release new Amiga models, the 600, the 1200, the 4000, each with incremental improvements, but never a truly revolutionary leap that could re-establish their dominance. They were playing catch-up and losing. The Amiga CD32, launched in 1993, was an attempt to enter the burgeoning console market. It was the world's first 32-bit CD-ROM console, and again, technologically impressive. But it was released into a market already dominated by the Sega Mega Drive and Super Nintendo, with the PlayStation just on the horizon. Commodore's financial woes deepened. Years of mismanagement, poor strategic decisions, and a failure to adapt to a rapidly changing market had taken their toll. They lacked the marketing budget, the developer support, and the sheer manufacturing scale of giants like Microsoft and Intel. By 1994, the inevitable happened. Commodore International filed for bankruptcy. The Amiga, once a beacon of technological foresight, was left an orphan. Its assets were sold off, its legacy fragmented, and its once vibrant community scattered. The Amiga's demise wasn't due to a lack of innovation. It was a victim of corporate mismanagement, a failure to understand market dynamics, and a reluctance to embrace industry standards. It was a proprietary ecosystem fighting against an open one, and the open one, with its collective momentum, ultimately prevailed. Today, the Amiga remains a beloved relic. Its influence can still be seen in modern computing, particularly in multimedia and operating system design. It was a pioneer, a testament to what's possible when engineers are given free rein to dream. But its story serves as a potent reminder: technological superiority alone is rarely enough. A brilliant product, without sound business strategy, effective marketing, and a thriving ecosystem, is often destined for the footnotes of history, no matter how bright its initial spark. The Amiga was the cutting-edge PC that couldn't outlast its rivals, not because it wasn't better, but because the world wasn't ready for its brilliance, or perhaps its creators weren't ready for the world. If you're fascinated by the empires that crumbled, you'll want to see our next deep dive.